Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
My gosh, I learned so much every time I talk with her. And just before we got on here today, I learned even more about hypnotherapy. Now, I've done it before. It can be a game changer in your life to realize what went on earlier in your life, to reprogram your life and just make you feel better. We're gonna break that down a little bit more. I just learned something and I didn't realize it. She's amazing. There's a reason that she has so many 5-star reviews as a hypnotherapist. She's fantastic. Melissa Darrington is back with us. How you doing today?
I'm so good. Thank you so much, Steve. It's wonderful always to be here with you. How are you today?
Very well, very well, and enlightened by what you shared seconds before we jumped on here, and that is that when we deal with a trauma, and last time we got together, we talked about some of the types of traumas that there can be. It could be a big one, meaning car accident, plane crash, a relative passed away. Even as a child, it's a big deal. But even some of the smaller traumas that you may have dealt with as a child, being bullied, parents breaking up, whatever it might be, pilots you later in life. Mm-hmm. Hypnotherapy can help uncover those things and move your life forward, those things that are stopping you. But you shared with us, or actually me, and I want to share with everybody now, that when you've dealt with a trauma, you're actually hypnotized at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Explain, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So something that I've learned recently as I was asked to join an international group that works with clients that have, high conflict divorce is what they're dealing with, and children are involved. And so dissociative disorder, being hypnotized essentially when you've had these traumatic situations, and it doesn't even have to be when you're a child, but it's easier for that to set up when you're a child because you're already in the theta, the learning state, the place where we're essentially already in a trance-like state. And so it's very easy then, when you're dealing with so much stress, when you're young, when you're in this learning stage, that it sets up your patterning. So when these situations happen later in life, it's like an automatic trigger and literally like a hypnosis that you get thrown into and start reacting in ways many people find that they don't want to react to these situations, but do so unconsciously. And that's exactly because it is set up in the subconscious.
So let's roll hypothetical.
Mm-hmm.
Let us say that little Jimmy is 7. Okay. And he continually gets bullied on the playground. And it's starting to make a mark on him. He feels isolated. When that happens, kid comes up to him and bullies him and says something to him. Is little Jimmy going into a hypnotic state at that moment on the playground?
He can be, because he's in a situation where he could feel like that he's not safe, for one. He's up against a threat, right? So the natural reaction, if we don't feel like we're safe or that there's someone there that can intervene for us, intercede for us, is that, yes, we tend to kind of like disassociate a little bit and try to, especially if we have to repeatedly deal with that situation, there's always going to be that reaction within our body that's going to crop up before, or even before, that situation happens, that thought of that situation happens, the feeling that that situation could happen can then start to more or less cause that domino effect to happen.
And the reason why I brought that up in a hypothetical way is little Jimmy, and every child is different, but we're just going to focus on little Jimmy. He becomes an adult. And from those just kids making fun of him on the playground, now his level of self-worth is lower as an adult. He feels inferior. He has lots of challenges as an adult, and it all came from that, call it a little T trauma. Some may say, all right, it happens on the playground. Kids call other kids names.
Yeah.
But I find it interesting that at that moment on that playground at 7, that he went into a hypnotic state to deal at that time And now later in life as an adult, he's 43.
Exactly.
He sees you. You put him in a hypnotic state and bring him back to his childhood to what I call connect the dots and figure out why he acts the way he
Exactly.
does. But it's hypnosis here, hypnosis there. Never
Yeah.
knew that that's happening.
Yes, you're just re-regulating the mental, emotional aspects of what happened around that situation so that you're dealing with it a different way in the here and now, as opposed to how you had to deal with it at that time.
Wow. Um, I'm still kind of blown away that when you're dealing with a trauma, you're hypnotized. So let's for people that have an aversion to hypnosis, I get it. People think you're controlling their mind and all of that.
It's
We're
simple,
hip,
but it's crazy. I know.
yeah, it is, but it's thanks to TV shows and the movies and everything. But hypnosis is natural. We deal with it on a daily basis, and we don't even know that we're in a hypnotic state, right?
Absolutely. So then when we're having these feelings, we may notice that we're having these feelings of unworthiness. But again, like you said, we don't know where that stems from and why we keep bumping up against that in certain situations.
Hmm.
So
What
there's,
are some examples of things that people have dealt with that you've helped them out with? And go. Smoking is one of them. Okay.
yeah,
I think that's one of the most recognizable ways that hypnotherapy can support somebody. We hear that all the time. One session and can stop you from smoking. Okay, great, fantastic. What are some of the other things that you've helped people with using hypnosis?
yeah. Some of the other things that I've helped people with a lot has been anxiety. It can be around different things. I've had it around people that have had a death recently, and they just, one particular, she was having a hard time with her father's death, but there was simultaneously some things going on with a current relationship that also tied into what was, had happened with her father, if you will, when she was younger. So it was really interesting to see how that all tied together without getting into specifics.
Yeah.
But with that particular situation, yeah, I found it, you never really know which way it's going to go when you start talking to somebody. And that's again because they don't understand what's actually happening beneath the surface. And it's all about asking the questions in the right way,
Hmm.
help them to explore it in a different way.
Processing that. So asking the questions during hypnosis helps you
Mhm.
get closer to finding what you need to find to help them.
Especially when they're in the subconscious or the theta state.
How's the difference in terms of answering the question when you're conscious as opposed to when you're in a hypnotic state?
So a conscious person is probably going to be quicker with their answers. One that's kind of more in their subconscious space is going to be thinking about it a little bit more before they respond.
Hmm.
Um, so you can tell that there is more than just the conscious aspect happening there, if you will.
I would imagine too, when somebody's fully conscious, there's also they might overthink it, might filter the answer.
They talk a lot. Again, it's slower when they're more in the subconscious space because they're not accessing the conscious mind as directly and they're really getting to the root of the problem.
So it's my understanding that 93% or 90-ish% of what we do on a regular basis is our subconscious. We're just being, programs are running. We're on autopilot in some regards. Is that in line with what you know?
Yeah, what can happen is obviously we're in more of the conscious states throughout the day. But think about how many times that something can happen. Somebody can say something, a certain song can play or whatever. Now you're in a state of hypnosis. Now you're having a memory of something. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it happens a lot, and you never know what can trigger something. And then now all of a sudden you might be in a bad mood the rest of the day and you don't even know why.
Wow. That's huge.
Mhm. That's
So
how important it is to deal with those things and understand why they make us feel the way they do.
it could, let me make sure I have that right. You going about your day, you're in a good mood, everything's all right. And something comes up, but you
Mhm.
don't even connect it to anything. It just something presented itself, but now your day has taken a turn, and I'm just in a bad mood now. I don't know what happened, but it's something that I'll use the word triggered you
Yeah,
back
absolutely.
back to your past, but you may not have figured that out.
Sometimes it
Wow.
can be good, sometimes it can be bad. Think about it. Again, like a song you hear or whatever, and all of a sudden that's hypnosis because now you're being taken out of the present where you're focused into another time and space.
So I've always wanted to get the answer to this. If most of what we're doing on a daily basis is based on our subconscious,
Mhm.
um, it seems that we're just on autopilot. Like we're having a conversation right now. And if 90% of us ish is our subconscious, what's really the real? What's really the conscious part of what, like it's just a conversation. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, your reality is really what you believe, what you feel. And so to have that in alignment is really important.
So, like our conversation right now, am I referring back to things I've said in the past? Like, you know where I'm going with that? Like, how are you living in the moment if which is we should be doing, as I've learned in my journey. That was the most important lesson I learned.
Yeah.
How are you living in the moment if 90% of what we do is our subconscious and it's kind of an autopilot?
Because a lot of what you're doing in the moment is also on autopilot. You're doing a lot of the same things every day.
Interesting.
So you're really not thinking about too much. You've already got your routine down. So you're not going into super high, conscious states unless you need to, unless, you're getting something ready, preparing a meeting or having to do some public speaking or something like that. But things like this is just automatic. And even those can be based upon patterning.
Hmm. Well, okay. Why does our subconscious do a lot of this, the most part? Isn't it to protect us?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's
So,
exactly why we refer back unconsciously to that patterning because that's what kept us safe at that time.
okay. Or familiarity. And where I'm going with that is I will see people, maybe meet people. I could go to the gym, right? And I'm looking over there, there's some dude over there, there's a woman over there. In my mind, some days, maybe I'm crazy, but I'll look at these people and I'll think they remind me of other people. There's a piece of that one reminds me of that person. A piece of that one reminds me. So it's a familiar, comfortable feel
Yeah.
that I have, and I wonder if other people have the same thing.
Yeah, and it's very true. Trauma is very consistent with it's what we know. It's what we're familiar with. And so that's why it's hard to break from it because it doesn't feel right when we do. And until we make that internal understanding as to why we should, it won't.
That's big.
Hmm.
It really is that if we're and we all we're creatures of habit, right? We always want to go back to what we know because it's comfortable. Doesn't mean it supports us. So breaking free of that is not easy. I never thought of that.
Exactly. It's not going to feel normal or familiar to us. So we're not really sure if it's safe, right?
Mm, wow. There's this drop the mic. That is huge. It really is. Like that
It
explains
is.
a lot.
Yeah.
Let it go. I can't let it go. Why? Because it's familiar to me. I don't it's bad, but I don't want to let it
And,
go.
and there's nothing wrong with you. It's just that you have to understand that until you get to that place within yourself where you really understand what happened, why you developed that patterning, and why it's not necessary now, and that you can make that change and be empowered to, then you're going to continue that way, most likely.
Hmm. What do you want people to know about hypnotherapy that we haven't really hit upon yet?
Well, with the type of hypnotherapy, like I have been saying that I do, and especially with all that I keep learning about trauma and this dissociative disorder and everything now, it's even helping me to approach um, things that happen in my life differently. I start to introspect a lot more as to where is this, why is this cropping up? And so that helps me when I'm working with my clients to understand where their resistances can be, and also how to help them to soften more so that they can be more open to the subconscious space and learn something different.
What's different about the way that you do hypnotherapy?
The difference in the traditional way and the way that I'm now doing it is we would typically use a script. And when our clients would come to us, it would be, of course, from that conscious space and telling us what they think is the problem and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would try to develop a script around that. And so it's not that it doesn't work, but it doesn't always work long term because we may not touch on everything that we really need to. With the type that I do now, I can take you in and out of, if you will, the theta, and just bring you out to a state enough to where I can test what we've went through, what you've discovered, see if that really is a good resource for you, or are there more things that we need to address. That's why I can do it all in one session.
Wow. So you're in and out of a hypnotic state when you're working with somebody, it sounds like?
Yes, it's called fractionization, and it causes for a deeper experience and more profound
Why?
because of you taking them in and out and addressing different things. It's not just one thing, you're addressing everything.
So first thing I come, talk about the gym, they say that to make an impact, you need to push yourself and drop down again, back and forth on a treadmill. Crank it up to, 6 miles an hour, then crank it down to 2. Then, 30 seconds here, back and forth. And that,
Yeah,
wakes your body up in a lot of ways. Sounds a little bit the same
it
with
is.
you in and out, because what's going on there? If you're in a 1 hour hypnotic state, I would think you get a little comfortable in that state. But now if you come out of it and you're back into it, it's I mean this in the lightest way possible, kind of shocking your body a little bit. Like, oh, I'm back. Oh, no, I'm not. Oh, I'm back.
Absolutely. No, you're absolutely right. You're talking about physical tension and conditioning when you're talking about the gym. This is mental and emotional conditioning. We're stretching you. We're causing you to step out of your comfort zone and really evaluate this for what it is. And by doing that and going in and out, yes, it does cause that to finally, in a sense, be like, okay, I finally get it.
That's really cool. I'm being honest. Having done hypnotherapy before, um, thinking about what you're saying makes so much sense
Mhm.
in getting the job done and getting the job done faster.
Yes, why not? Who wants to keep going to the therapist?
Would this be true for anybody that maybe is new to hypnotherapy? For me, snap your finger and put me in right now. I love it.
Yeah.
But short of that, uh, is it true that if somebody has a little bit of an aversion, yeah, I'm not really sure I'm going to do it, but I believe it's going to work. Telling them that I'm going to put you under hypnotic state, we're going to do our thing, that might take you out of it. Then we're going to go back in a little bit later. It's more palatable. It's easier for somebody.
Yeah, there's ways you can do it without alerting them, if you will.
Do they? Do your clients know that they're hypnotized, then they're out of it, and then they're back in again?
I've never asked them what their feelings are when I'm doing that process, but maybe that's something I will do because it would be nice to get that feedback. But I would imagine that um, it would be like coming into, when you're going in, it would be like going into that imaginative or, trance-like state, but then almost like you're having a guided meditation being done with you, right? And then so you come out of it and you're not quite fully out of it, but you're conscious, more conscious. And then you're able to process more with the analytical mind, but not be completely in that space. So we want to be able to work with both because that's important. They're symbiotic. You get the messages, it gets sent through the nervous system. You know what I mean? So it's important to be able to address both. And that's why the theta state is so optimal for that.
Final question, on the tech side of things. I know that when you're hypnotized, there's different ways to do it. For me, I've done I even do it to myself where you look up, right, into your eyebrows for like 30 seconds, and then your eyes start to flutter, and then also you're in a certain state, or you count yourself down steps and things like that. Tech question. When you hypnotize somebody, you have to use some means to get them there. But how are you getting them out and then putting them back in? Does that mean you have to do the whole thing over again? I don't know if that makes sense.
So I don't bring them fully out until I feel like we're at the end. And then I'll just ask them a simple question that's not related, like, oh, what do you have going on later today?
Okay, so
oh, I like your shoes, something.
while they're hypnotized, you do that?
When they're more at the end of it, but they're still, coming out, they're like pretty alert, but we want to break them out of it. And that's a good way to do it, by just kind of asking about something irrelevant.
It's so cool. How do we connect with you? How do we find you? I know that you can do this virtually. I've now that I think about it, any session I've ever had has been virtual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the best way, I feel, because then you get to be in the comfort of your home. You can still have all of the things set up to where you can hear well, and you're still in a safe space. And I find a lot of people really relate to that well, but with, since 2020, I think that it's also been very helpful as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we broke the Zoom ice, so to speak.
Culture.
Right. That's kind of the norm.
Yeah.
We just go to your website, or no? What's the best way to find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Google under Happy Medium Hypnosis. I also do have a website, yes, happymediumhypnosis.com, and 602-622-2684 if you're interested in any speaking engagements or to learn more about what I teach here. Be happy to come and talk more about it.
What makes you radically different in my eyes is that you're always thirsty to learn more. New ways to do things, parts of different associations, alliances, and things like that. Other hypnotherapists, they're fine. They do their thing and that's it. But you have a knowledge, a thirst to continually even hone your skills. One little thing here that could make it all more better for somebody. And I respect that. I think that's super cool.
I do. Thank you so much for seeing that in me. I really appreciate that.
Oh, I appreciate you, Melissa. Thanks for today. And we'll talk soon. Maybe next time we get together, maybe an example we could do of what it looks like to hypnotize somebody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not a lot of people, I think, have witnessed that, aside from, watching TV, which is not really reality, if you will.
I have someone in mind that might be a good participant.
All right. Sounds good. We'll catch up next time.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
We'll be right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.